test, 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 test. Okay.
for your offices and stuff like that.
Right, right.
So it's
Okay.
So I just wanted to say
Oh, that would be very
that I
important.
didn't find an easy way to
Yes.
do it.
Right, right.
You know, so this gives me time. I mean, maybe I just leave it as
Right. Not only just have to. Okay, yes.
send an email for 2 grand. You know, not very hours, but that.
Okay. So, yeah, so it's great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I guess we'll stay sitting over here. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight for the special meeting of the Menlo Park City Council. I'm Peter Otaki. I'm honored to be the mayor this year, and allow me to do some introductions and take the role at the start. On my right, we have Council Member Rich Klein. We have Council Member Kirsten Keith. To my left, Vice Mayor Ray Mueller, and also Council Member Catherine Carlton. Over on this side of the dais is our City Manager, Alex McIntyre, our City Attorney, Bill McClure. Over on this side is our Assistant City Clerk, Yelena Harada, and I want to encourage you that if you would like to speak this evening, please fill out a public comment card and hand it to Yelena. And we actually, yes, I do have on this. Okay,
excuse me?
Yes.
I can't sign in.
Okay.
Just letting you know.
Okay, great. So what we'll do is
So
we'll do a
IT,
voice.
if you're listening, I can't sign in. Thank you.
So we'll either fix it or make sure we take a voice vote for you. So all council members are present this evening, and if I'd like to invite everyone to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I have nothing to report out on any action in the closed session. So we'll now move to public comment. Under public comment, the public may address the City Council on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the City Council once. Under public comment, for a limit of 3 minutes, please clearly state your name and address your political jurisdiction in which you live. The City Council cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the City Council cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. And we do have one public comment card from Steve Van Pelt. Steve, welcome this evening.
Hello, Mayor, Council. I just want to briefly state that if your intent is for the recordings that you make of this and other meetings to let people successfully participate in the meeting and understand what's going on, you really need to take a look at some of these videos yourself. Even though here in a council meeting, the cameras are adjusted around, the quality of the video is poor enough that it's almost impossible to read any of the exhibits that are displayed. And I realize after the fact, many of the things are available online, but it sure would be nice if you could get it in one complete place. And I would really point you to the Complete Streets meeting the other night, because it was completely devoid of sound for the first 2 hours and 45 minutes. and there they just have one camera shot. I think this is pretty typical of a lot of the other meetings of the council, but there are staff members on either side, and there are things being presented. And unfortunately, sound can also be an issue because not everybody uses the mic successfully. So you're putting a lot of effort into it already, but it needs a lot of refinement to make it totally successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Elena, do we have any other public comment cards?
No.
All right. Now we will move to item D, and actually that should be labeled public hearing. So the topic is consideration of the Advisory Districting Committee's recommendation on adoption of a 5-district map and 6-district map with an at-large elected mayor and related election sequencing. I actually will start out with the staff presentation, and then I will open the public hearing. So,
Thank you.
good evening, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Honorable Council. Excuse me. My name is...
And I should probably introduce, so it's Kara Silver, our Assistant City Attorney and Interim City Clerk, Clay Curtin, as well as our consultant, Shalise Tilton from National Demographics Corporation. I'm sorry I didn't do that, but welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I would like to start out the presentation by giving an overview of the districting process that Menlo Park has embarked on, providing you with the legal framework for drawing district maps. And then we also have the privilege of having one of the members of the Advisory Districting Committee present, who will present the actual recommendations that the Districting Committee had with respect to the maps. And then finally, we will review the districting transition timeline. So by way of brief background, as you recall, on October 4th of last year, in response to a litigation threat, the council adopted a resolution of intent indicating that it would like to transition from an at-large election system to a by-district election system. On December 4th of 2017, the City Council established an advisory districting committee, and on January 16th and 19th, the advisory districting committee was impaneled. The advisory districting committee consisted of 9 members, and I've listed them here. We have some of them in the audience with us. I would like to publicly acknowledge them on behalf of staff and the City Council. They did an amazing job in a short amount of time with some very difficult, detail-oriented work, and we really enjoyed the service of these members. Honor Huntington was the chair. Michael Hoff was the vice chair. We also had Carolyn Bauscher, Katie Cage, Michael Cohen, Mark Heim, Nicholas Taylor, Joan Wesley, and Karen Zack. With respect to the actual districting committee structure, the committee was formed under the spirit of some new legislation, which we refer to as SB 1108, which provided for an independent districting committee. And this is a new piece of legislation that allows general law cities to impanel an independent committee to actually make districting decisions and redistricting decisions on behalf of the city. Given the time constraints in our particular situation and the pending litigation threat, we were not able to formally impanel an independent committee, but the council took the basic elements and the model of the independent committee and used it in this case. The committee members under SB 1108 and under the council resolution must adhere to strict pre- and post-service requirements to ensure that they were impartial and nonpartisan. The most strict and stringent requirement included a commitment that they would not run for local elected office for 10 years and could not be appointed to a city board or commission in 4 years. These were great commission members, though, and so hopefully after that 4-year period lapses, they will revisit an additional volunteer opportunity here in Menlo Park. The first 3 members were randomly selected by the city clerk, and the remaining committee members then were randomly selected also by the 3 founding members. In connection with the resolution that the council adopted, the map recommendations and the election sequencing recommendations were required to be made by a 2/3 vote rather than the more typical majority vote. And the recommendations that come to you this evening were done by a 2/3 vote. Finally, the City Council resolution that you adopted establishing the committee contained a provision that expressed your intent to adopt the committee's recommendation. The charge of the committee was to make a recommendation on a 5-district map that divided the city into 5 separate districts where each council member would be elected from a particular council district, and also to make a recommendation regarding a 6-district scenario where there would be 6 separately elected council members, each from a district, but then the mayor, which would be the 7th member of the council, would be elected at large by the whole community. Finally, the committee was charged with making election sequencing recommendations for each of the 2 scenarios. The committee was provided with staff. Clay Curtin, interim city clerk, provided staff support on behalf of the city. He was at every meeting, and we really appreciated all of the fine work that he did for the committee, especially given the short time period that we were operating under. City attorney staff attended the committee meetings, and we also had the city's demographic consultant at each of the committee meetings as well. Finally, the committee was provided the online tool that was developed, provided to us by the city's demographer, NDC, and the committee members got extensive training on the tool, and the maps that are being recommended to you tonight were actually developed by members of the committee using the mapping tool. Now I want to go over the legal framework that operates in this context. We are, in terms of the transition that needs to be made, the City Council is operating under what we call a safe harbor provision. There are 2 pieces of legislation that were recently enacted that allow cities to transition more quickly to district elections, and those pieces of legislation are codified in the election code and in the government code. Under these safe harbor provisions, the council is permitted to change its election process by way of a city council adopted ordinance rather than an ordinance that is approved by the voters. In the election context, it's more typical to have major changes to government structure approved by the voters. But in recognition of the California Voting Rights Act, and in order to encourage cities to more quickly transition to by-district elections, these 2 safe harbors were enacted by the state legislature. Under the safe harbor, we are required to conduct 5 public hearings. And in order to complete the transition process in time for the November 2018 election, we must get our amended district maps to the county by May 1st. In terms of the district boundaries, there are certain mandatory criteria that must be applied when drawing boundaries. This criteria is primarily established by case law and by the Federal Voting Rights Act law. In particular, there can be no gerrymandering. In this context, the terms cracking and packing typically come up. What cracking is when a racially protected group is divided into several different districts in order to dilute their voting strength. On the other hand, packing is when a racial minority group, which exists in different geographic areas, is packed into one district in order to give them only one vote. So the committee spent a lot of time on these two issues and paid a lot of attention to the protected classes and the demography that we have in Menlo Park specifically. With respect to the neighborhoods, the committee looked at the racial makeup of all of the neighborhoods, and it was found, based on the current demographics, that most of the racial minorities live in Belhaven. And so particular attention was paid to the Belhaven area of the city for purposes of this Voting Rights Act issue. Another issue that the committee talked about in detail was the qualified voting age population. This is another group of data separate from the census data that analyzes the actual voting age population in each of the census districts. And it was discovered that in Belhaven, the voting age population of Latinos was 51%, African American 30%, 10% white, 5% Pacific Islander, and 4% other. In terms of another mandatory criteria, we hear the term equal population raised. It does not, an equal population requirement does not mean that you must have exactly the same amount of residents in each district. And the standard is typically a 10% deviation between the lowest populated district and the highest populated district. If the deviation between those two is less than 10%, the courts presume that you have equal population, and that presumption is rebuttable, but it is presumed to be constitutional. If you have a deviation of over 10%, the courts presume that it is unconstitutional. The committee early on agreed that they wanted to present maps to the council that were within the 10% and in that they would be presumed constitutional. The ideal population for a 5-district map is 6,405, and the ideal population for a 6-district map is 5,338. And the 10% adjustment factors in those two ideal numbers for the 5 and 6 districts. Another issue that came up is that we must use the 2010 census data under Voting Rights Act law, and that new developments that are built after 2010 may not be counted in terms of population, and we refer to those particular census districts as zero population census districts. Election sequencing. The City Council has the flexibility to decide sequencing issues, but there are some limitations. No term of office of existing office holders may be cut short. Also, it's well established that staggered terms serve the city better than having all new council members every 2 or 4 years. Also, if the council is going to be adjusting any sequencing selections, know that the sequencing follows the particular map, and so each map must be published with the sequencing that is attached to it. Also, the Voting Rights Act requires that the City Council give special consideration to its purposes, and that the City Council must take into account the preferences expressed by members of the individual districts. So with that legal framework in mind, I would like to turn it over now to one of the committee members, Max Heim, who will present the committee's findings.
Good evening.
Hi, Matt. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. Yes. So my name is Max Heim. I'm a member of the Advisory District Committee. We have a little slide here about the committee selection. We already went through that in the staff report, but I just want to say that in making the selection of the additional members of the committee beyond the first 3 that were randomly chosen, what we did is we chose them by trying to get a distribution of various areas of the city to get as much diversity of geography as possible so that all neighborhoods would be represented. And I think we did a pretty good job as far as based on our applicants. We have I'm not going to get into a lot of our deliberations because I think the staff report goes into those in detail, but I just wanted to say a few things about our recommended maps. That one thing you might notice, the city boundary is a very strange shape, so we did a lot of work to make the district seem logical. Most neighborhoods were small enough to fit into a single district, and West Menlo being the major exception. So I think our recommended 5-district map keeps Bellhaven intact, keeps almost all neighborhoods intact, and downtown El Camino commercial area is split between 2 districts, Districts 3 and District 4. It includes a district where apartment dwellers, who are 37% of Menlo Park, are a majority in that district. Now, when I say apartment dwellers, what I specifically mean is actually multi-unit dwellers, because we can't tell from the demographic data if they're apartments or condos, but that was something that was expressed to us by a public input, and we actually checked that. We tried to keep the divisions along major streets or logical neighborhood boundaries so that you could describe a district in simple terms. You didn't have to, have a very convoluted boundary. And then we tried to keep them compact so that you wouldn't have people that lived, 3 miles away, perhaps, all in the same district. So those are kind of some of our criteria. Move on to the districting, 5 districts. Because we have our existing system of staggered council elections, only 3 districts would have an election this year, 2018. But another way to look at that is to say that the system of district-based elections is not fully implemented until 2020. And that's the way we kind of thought of it, that it was a process. We considered several criteria for this sequencing, one of which was that we didn't want one entire side of the city voting in one election and then the other half of the city in the next election. So we didn't want to group districts 1, 2, 3, and then districts 4 and 5 the next election. So we tried to stagger that slightly. We kind of took as a given that District 1 needed to be in 2018 because that's kind of the guiding principle of this entire process. So, and then because of the principle where we can't cut short existing terms, District 5 needed to be at the, we felt had to be in 2020. So there were some limitations on our choices here. The recommended 6-district map presented some problems. The most difficult one was that the fact that the population of the Belhaven neighborhood was too large to fit in a single district. It was it's basically makes up almost exactly 1/5 of the city, so trying to fit it into 1/6 of the city doesn't really work. And so this was other compromises were made to make this map work numbers-wise. You can see there's a funny bump in between District 4 and 5, because that's an extremely high population block right there. And so it's but we did manage to keep the neighborhoods intact as possible, we felt. Another feature of this map is that downtown El Camino commercial districts are split among 3 districts instead of 4 districts. But it's at the end, none of us were very satisfied with this 6-district map. The sequencing for this 6-district map, which involves a 7-member council, is a little more complicated, and a 2-year term is required as a temporary expedient. And again, it's kind of a 2-year process to fully implement the district-based elections. And we have one additional recommendation that was not called for specifically, but we, in discussion, the committee unanimously wanted to recommend a 5-district solution over a 6-district solution because all the 6-district plans had unavoidable awkward carve-outs. They did not seem to fit naturally into the geographic neighborhoods of the city. Because of the having to split a little area out of Belhaven, we felt that that was diluting their representation on the council. We think that is actually kind of that was strongly objected to by the public input we had, and it does seem like it's kind of questionable given the overall the overriding purpose of this district election process. And then our public input in general was all in favor of the 5-district solution. I don't think we had a single member of the public that stood up and told us they want the 6-district solution. So in the end, we felt that the 5 districts would be a better solution for the city. And finally, the committee would like to extend thanks to our staff members, Clay Curtin and Cara Silver, and to the consultants from National Demographic Corporation for efforts above and beyond the call of duty, which enabled us to reach our goals in an unprecedented short period of time. I mean, they really had to work long hours. We would finish a meeting at 11 p.m. and the minutes would have to be published before, next morning. So, I mean, so they had to do minutes. We also received dozens of map submissions from the general public, which the demographic consultants had to process, work out all the demographic percentages, and have available for our next meeting. And sometimes we had 2 meetings in the same week. And so it was just an amazing effort that we're very grateful for, and it really made this whole thing possible. And I also would like to express my personal regards for the members of this committee. It was a pleasure and a privilege to work with such dedicated, honest, fair, and open-minded people. At first, the task in front of us seemed daunting, but in the end, I think it was a wonderful example of civic engagement and democracy in action. I know we are all proud of what we accomplished in a very short time, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve. Thank you.
Max, thank you very much. And please extend to the entire commission our appreciation and gratefulness for all of the hard work that it clearly shows in the recommendations and the deliberations that took place. In fact, I was thinking it would be great to redeploy you guys onto like the transportation master plan, but I understand that that's prohibited. Anyway, just I wanted to say a sincere thank you for.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Kara, back to you.
Thank you. So just to wrap this up, we wanted to go over where we have been and where we are headed. So you're in the process of of conducting your 5 public hearings under the Safe Harbor. You've conducted 2 public hearings already. You have impaneled a districting committee. They have made their recommendation. The recommendation has been published, and the maps have been presented to the council. This evening, we're conducting the 3rd public hearing, where you will receive input on the 2 maps that were presented to you by the committee. Following that, you have 2 choices. If you want to make refinements to either one of those maps, you can send it back to the committee. And we have scheduled some time. It's a very short period of time for the committee to reassemble and make another recommendation to you. And then we have scheduled your 4th public hearing for April 17th. And at that time, we would expect to also bring back an ordinance that would actually perform the transition from at-large to by-district elections. And then April 24th, we have tentatively scheduled the 5th public hearing just in time to deliver the final map to the city clerk by May 1st. And then November 6th, we would have an election, assuming a 5-district map of 3 seats. And then November 20th, November 2020, we would then have an election on the second 2 seats, again, assuming a 5-district map. And in 2021, we would be ready to do some redistricting. In terms of the council action tonight, we wanted you to receive public input, of course, and then hopefully be able to decide on whether a 5 or 6 district map is preferable, give some feedback on the district boundaries, and also feedback on the election sequencing that was proposed by the committee. And with that, that concludes staff's presentation.
Great, Kara, thank you very much. And thank you to staff and National Demographics Corporation. Before I open the public hearing, are there any clarification questions from the dais? Okay. I will now open the public hearing and would like to invite public comment. I'm going to switch over since I know we do have, here we go. Helen Greco, you are our first speaker this evening. I apologize if I mispronounced your last name, followed by Julie Shanson. Helen, good evening.
Hi, thank you very much. So once again, I'm happy to be here, and I work for California Common Cause, and Common Cause has a 40-plus year history of working on good government reforms. Here in California, we helped to institute the State Redistricting Commission so that the Assembly and the Senate was done fairly. The year later, we did the congressional districts under the same Independent Redistricting Commission. And I would say that we're on a rampage now to work on the local redistricting process and have been a part of a great website, www.localredistricting.org, which we used in this process. I think it's astounding that so many members signed up to be on this commission, that they did this in an extraordinarily quick process and with a very great open format. I've been to some of the meetings. I think the commission was exemplary. They did an excellent job. It's exciting to see that their recommendation is for 5 districts. We certainly support whatever the advisory commission as Common Cause is recommending to you all. And I will just say that I've heard some concerns about sequencing, so maybe that's a matter that you want to delve into a little bit further. But nonetheless, we are very happy to witness this as, you say, democracy in action. Thank you very much for this time.
Thank you, Helen. Julie Shanson, followed by Pamela Jones. Good evening, Julie.
Good evening. Thank you. I want to put in a plug for the 5-district option. I think that it's keeps everybody in the neighborhoods they think they're in. I think that's one of the best things about it. And as far as the sequencing, I would like to say, as a resident of the Willows, I've been very lucky to have representation for the last a really long time. So not only Councilwoman Keith, but also her predecessor, Kelly Ferguson. And I think it might be time to let District 3 come up sooner in 2018, especially since all of the grade separations are going to go through. There's a lot of construction and things going on in that district that we are not seeing in the Willows. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Pamela Jones, followed by Michael Cohen.
Good evening, council and staff, and I want to reiterate a deep level of gratitude for the work that the Advisory Districting Committee did. They restored my faith in democracy, and growing up during the 50s and the 60s, being a part of the Civil Rights Movement, also being an alumni of the Junior Statesmen of America, I have had an opportunity to see what we look like when democracy does not work. But here in Menlo Park, we know what we're doing, and I'm really grateful for that. As I stated in my letter, I believe that the 6th District mayor at large would not satisfy the letter from Mr. Shankman because it includes an at-large. It also would dilute the vote of the community, the District 1, because it would only be 14%, given there would be a 7-member council. So I ask that you throw that out. In considering the sequencing, I ask you to really look in depth at all of the issues that face the city and look at what issues are most important as opposed to what do I need to do to maintain my seat on the council. And because it's no secret that we run for multiple years and we sit for as long as we physically and emotionally can tolerate it, as opposed to looking at what we require of our commissions and our committees. We only allow them 2 or 8 years total, and then they have to wait a year before they can come back on. So really take into consideration how you sequence, look at what is happening in each one of those districts, and I know that you will make the right decision because we've come this far. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Michael Cohen, followed by Fran Dean.
Thank you. I'm Mike Cohen. I'm a resident of Menlo Park. I'm also a member of the advisory committee, but I'm speaking to you only with my own opinions here. First, I wanted to thank you not just for creating the committee, but for spending the money to give us the tools, the consultants, and, which didn't take money, the independence to come to what we really think is the best solution. The chamber has given you, you have on the paper before, and Fran's going to talk in a minute, 2 suggested changes to the committee's recommended 5-district map. One of them, which pertains to the strip along El Camino where the car dealerships used to be and Staples and that, I really can't comment on that. The other is a proposal to take the little stub of District 3, which in our map crosses over El Camino and runs up to Crane Street, and the proposal is to run it up to University. Let me just say that I would normally agree with that completely. If you look at the neighborhood, the kind of dwellings, everything, it would make sense. The problem is it violates the equal population requirement. And I think also Max, have spent a good bit of time trying to come up with some solution that would do that, because we really do think that would be the right thing to do. Anything we came up with, you end up with a really ugly carve out in some other direction. So I'm sure we'd be happy to try further. I just don't want you to get your hopes up. Finally, sequencing. The one important thing about sequencing that the committee felt, and that I personally feel, is to not have all the districts on one side of El Camino elected in one year and all the districts on the other side elected in the other year. And as long as and the reason for that is, if something were to come up in the middle of one side or the other, Suppose everybody on the east side of El Camino is elected in 2018. And in 2019, something important comes up at Middlefield or at 101 or anywhere around there. It's 3 years before anybody around there gets to elect anybody to the council. So there's a real advantage to, to kind of staggering it. Within that, I'm not sure there's a really important thing. I think Bellhaven should go in 2018. They've been waiting a long time. Beyond that, you could flip a coin. You could decide that, as somebody pointed out, District 3 currently and for a while hasn't had anyone on the council. Maybe they should go. I'm not sure it's so critical. But I really do urge you to not have everybody on one side of El Camino elected at the same time. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And again, thank you for your work. Fran Dean from the Chamber of Commerce, followed by Rob Solano.
Good evening, Fran Dean, Chamber of Commerce. And Mr. Cohen, my glass is always full. I'm always hopeful. But I do agree with his comments. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to provide input on the ADC recommendation. The council's decision to evaluate and then move toward a by-district election system for the city was first publicly introduced less than 6 months ago. The formation and work of the Advisory Districting Committee was by necessity condensed, resulting in 8 meetings over the course of 9 weeks. And we'd like to acknowledge and thank the 9 committee members for their work. They did great work. We followed the process closely. We've attended all of the Advisory Districting Committee meetings. We provided input through public comment and submitted a 5-district configuration, which is map 19, 519. For consideration. This map was specifically designed to give maximum representation in key areas of the city. But moving forward, our comments on your decision process tonight are as follows, and they're divided into 2 categories, numbers of districts and map selection. In terms of numbers of districts, the Chamber supports a 5-district map, period. We urge you to adopt that over a 6-district map because 5 districts minimizes transition over the next 3 election cycles. And I'd like to point out, 2018, it's an interim by-district solution to avoid threatened litigation. In 2020, we are, if adopted by voters in 2018, potentially going to a charter process, another change in districting. 2022, we have the 2020 census coming through. It will necessitate new district boundaries based on population shifts. Now, in evaluating the 6th district solution, we believe it has the following deficiencies: litigation, fragmentation, scope, support, and perspective. In terms of litigation, it trades threatened litigation, the Schenkman letter, over potential litigation. And I reference for you 3 different staff reports written by or authored by the city attorney's office. And the quote is, increasing the number of members of a legislative body may require a ballot measure. Fragmentation, second issue. It's inconsistent with our population based on our city size. With the exception of Redwood City, that has a population of 85,000, San Mateo County cities do not have more than 5 council members. I'll take an exception. Woodside has 7. I think they're counting horses. I don't know. But even the Board of Supervisors is capped at 5 members. In terms of scope, this action, if you adopt 6 districts, is too significant. Did I do 3 minutes? I think I will have donated time, and they will fill out cards. In terms of scope, the action's too significant to go to 6 districts. It's too soon, and it's without analysis of benefits, if any. 6 districts lack support. ADC recommends against 6 districts. We recommend against 6 districts. And it also lacks perspective. 2018 is a transition state. It is not an end state. Order your change responsibly. Now I'd like to go to map selection. There are certainly attributes with either map, and you asked for a map that was 6 districts and 5 districts. but definitely we prefer map 5007A over the 6th District one for the reasons I mentioned. We do, however, recommend the following changes to the 5-district map, and those changes are for Districts 3 and 4. And I have left with you a copy of what those changes would look like. The first one is El Camino Real. We ask that El Camino Real be bifurcated between San Francisco Creek and the Ravenswood Avenue, which then would allocate the east side of District 3 and the west side of District 3 equally. Cut the map, or cut El Camino. District 3 has half of it, District 4 has half of it. Why do we want this? Well, by allocating the area east of El Camino to District 3 and the west side to District 4, you are going to give an advantage to each, and keep in mind that all future rail changes will be borne by District 3. That is, grade separations, bike pedestrian crossings, potential construction shoe fly, and any other resulting implications from high-speed rail. This boundary is a zero population area and will not create a statistical difference in the mapping that has been provided. But it does allow District 3 to have representation on what could be chaos. They need to be able to be represented there. Now, the second one that we have recommended is downtown, extending District 3 downtown border from Crane to University Avenue to reflect a more equitable distribution, splitting along the main arterial. And Mr. Cohen is correct. That does create a statistical imbalance, but they're a good committee. They could work it out. For those of us who have attended all the ADC meetings, if we learned anything from the process, it's that there's no perfect map or no perfect process. We do trust that any future modifications in districting that may result in future elections will include maximum representation in key civic areas as one of the critical elements in developing those maps. And I thank you very much. And people are filling out cards now.
Thank you, Fran. Fire District Director Rob Solano, welcome.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Honorable Council members. I'm for the 6th District map, and the reason why I'm for that is that the common goal for the 6th District map would be the more of an individualized representation that the council member will have in that particular area. And secondly, with the at-large position, we'll have the totality of the representation of the entire city too. So you've got a dual role there relative to that. Districts 2 and 3 have different challenges, as we all know. We're dealing with District 3 with a lot of pass-through traffic. They've got the creek, could have flooding issues. They have 2 water systems. District 2 has other challenges as Marsh Road, but they have 1 water district. And critical infrastructure is important in order to have some commonality relative per district. And I just think that District 6, the 6th District presentation would be the best. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Rob. Do we have any additional speakers?
No.
Okay. Last chance. Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
And by acclamation, assuming your button's not working on your Councilmember Carlton, but by acclamation, we are closing the public hearing. Okay. Great. Now we'll bring it back up here. I certainly, before we launch into our questions, I did want to suggest if you could put up that slide with council actions, because I thought that set up a pretty good order for us to get through the different items to consider after public input that we first discuss whether it's 5 or 6 districts. Secondly, because it's hard to really, why spend time on district boundaries if you don't know which alternative? And then furthermore, sequencing makes sense, after that. So I thought it'd be a way for us to kind of take bite-sized pieces of this very complicated topic. So I'd like to suggest we focus now on the 5 or 6 district map alternatives. That doesn't preclude you for making any comments related to boundaries or sequencing, but I'd like to have us kind of get to some consensus and perhaps even a vote on the which of those 2 alternatives first, and then move on to the next topic item. So I'm not sure whose light went on first. Council Vice Mayor Mueller.
I'll be brief. I support 5 districts. So.
Okay. Councilmember Klein.
Yeah, thank you. I also support 5. I do want to, because of our resolution and our pledge in this process to send any changes we have back to this committee, which I want to commend the committee. You had a feeling going in, the list of names, it was going to be a pretty good committee, but it turned out being better than that. So it was high quality work and under duress, staff as well. So I do want to thank you very much for that. But the El Camino change that's proposed does make sense from a couple of perspectives, but to change it, to send it back, to go to 2 more hearings and to push this thing into a, really kind of like stretch our timeline, it concerns me. But Allied Arts having the impact of El Camino in having that district, having that ability, whereas the rail separates Linfield, but Linfield having the impacts at Ravenswood and downtown and all those projects, it feels like a good split. The only way we do that is by sending it back for review from the committee and going through the multiple hearings, right?
That's correct, the way you've set it up.
Even if there's no impact on a number of people being moved or anything?
The population issue really has to do with balancing the districts. It doesn't have to do with actually the layout of the districts itself. So, technically, what you said is that if you were going to make any changes, you would send it back.
Right. Okay. So I support 5. I think that change at El Camino is an idea to consider, but I don't want to put this thing in the balance for something that could perhaps be updated later, and maybe there's a way to have that happen. I think I'll leave most of the comments down to that. There'll be follow-up questions, but the work is very clean. It's very obvious that it's been thought through, and anything I say will just seem redundant.
Councilmember Keith.
Thank you. I just want to say also thank you very much to our 9 members on the Advisory District Committee, and also to the staff for doing such a fantastic job in such a short time. Really, really appreciate it. We know it takes a lot of effort to rearrange your own schedules, too, to have those meetings every week. And I wanted to confirm, was your recommendation for the 5 districts was unanimous, is that right? Yeah, that's what I thought. So I just wanted to reiterate that was a unanimous decision. And I have a very thoughtful group of residents, so thank you. And I definitely support that as well. And I appreciate your recommendations, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Kirsten. And Councilmember Carlton.
Did you want to say something?
Oh,
okay. Great, thank you. So I was very careful to make sure that I didn't contact anybody who's on the committee or go anywhere near the meetings, because none of us want to have that sense of impropriety. So I don't know what went on, but I'm impressed that this seemed to be a Herculean task. And thank you so much for all the work. And to the staff, thank you as well, because, this came out of the blue. And I'm really impressed. My great-grandmother used to say that snails whizzing by make them dizzy, with regard to how fast how long it takes to get things done sometimes in government. And so this proves that it can be done, and thank you so much. I think it's a first choice. We all know that it has to be 5, so that's kind of a silly question. Yes, it's going to be 5. I agree with Councilmember Klein that I don't want to have to send it back and cause more work at this point. We can work out the details when we get the next census in, but I think it seems to be okay the way it is at this point.
So I'll simply chime in on this, that I also concur about a 5-district map. So I think it's pretty much unanimous here. And in addition to the reasons that were mentioned and I think articulated about not wanting to fragment the city in smaller areas, and the fact that, we still are a 33,000 resident city, and even in the next couple elections, we're still going to be pretty close to that size. It won't be till 5 or 6 years from now, and at that point we can revisit the topic of the number of seats. But for now, I think it makes sense. And I have to say, really, do we want the meetings to go any longer than they are now? I think 5 council members, I think we do pretty well. And I've certainly seen 7+ member bodies that will go unnamed that go very late. I also just think it's difficult to have an at-large mayor. It's as much as it's a nice idea, but we all have day jobs, and it's all pretty hard to do for more than a year. So at a time. So for all those reasons, I'm with certainly support the 5-district map. I don't even think we need to take a vote on it, just because I think we'll probably do a wrap-up on it, but and a vote at the end where we can talk about it. But I think that makes, I think we can now move on to the next topic, which is feedback on district boundaries. Any sort of questions? Any?
Yeah.
Councilmember Keith?
Thanks. Yeah, now that we're onto the boundary issue, I too am reluctant to start changing boundaries that our 9-member group put together. And I do I recognize that the chamber, and Fran, thank you for speaking tonight, wants some slight changes. I don't know that it's worth it at this time to push this process, and since we want to make sure we stay on our timeline, which is important for this threatened litigation. And also, we're going to be doing this again really soon, because we're having a census in 2020, and we'll be doing this within a few years. So, and also, I know that we're going to districts, but I have to say, I hope that, we all still recognize that Menlo Park is a small city of 33,000 people, and that we all, want to make sure that whatever's going on that, around the city, that we're all caring for that equally, whether you're voted from a certain district or not. So I think that whoever, council members are still going to be concerned about what's happening and be thoughtful about what's happening all across the city as we are now.
Okay. Rich, if I can ask if I could go ahead of you, because I did have, as Kirsten was mentioned, talking, I wanted to at least get an idea out that I had, which I think is, first of all, I'm generally fine with the 5-district map. I do think there's a potential improvement, at least from my perspective, that I think could be made. Now, first of all, there's no question that, so District 1 stays as is in the 07 map, and the borderline between District 1 and 2 and the borderline between 2 and 3 stays the same as in 07A. The question I wanted to to raise is the borderline between 3 and 4, and trying to figure out where is that common community of interest. As we all know, the whole section of that Middle Menlo Park, it's hard, there are specific neighborhoods, but it's kind of hard, there are different pieces and they align in different ways. And the suggestion that I'd like to make is to consider whether Allied Arts and Linfield Oaks are more of a community of interest for a couple reasons. The section south of Ravenswood on El Camino Real is a big traffic bottleneck. It's an area between, we've got the middle underpass, you've got grade separations, you've got the Stanford project. All of that, I think there's a lot in common between having Allied Arts and Linfield Oaks in the same district that can provide a lot of focus around that portion of El Camino Real. In addition, there's a fair number of apartments in that section on Roble, on Live Oak, and that further adds to sort of a district that has a strong representation for apartments. But obviously, if you do that, now how do you balance out the population? And I think that goes to, there's a stronger community of interest between the area in that central Menlo Park with both Felton Gables, Park Forest, and essentially the area north of Ravenswood. So those two actually are roughly equal in population, and that's, if you look at, there's a map 5010, which did look at those two, that district line configuration, and it did show the population being balanced similarly as 07. There's really, they are both equal in size, population-wise, and at the 6,500 level. So that keeps that balance. It also does bifurcate El Camino Real into different districts, 3 and 4. It also bifurcates the Santa Cruz downtown between 3 and 4, so it does some of that balancing. So I do recognize that what it might do, obviously, as we set up the policy, we would have to go back to the very capable elections districting committee, but I did think there's some commonality by using that east-west line of Ravenswood and Santa Cruz, as opposed to necessarily using El Camino as the line, right? And so I wanted to at least suggest that as a possible suggestion or possible improvement, and I'll kind of leave it at that. So Rich, I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot with reactions,
I can. I understand your point. It goes back to how I'm feeling just about even the sliver, excuse me, change. I know there's going to be a couple of different instances to revisit and have discussions about this in the next 2, 4, and other years, and so I think I'm prioritizing getting this done, getting this locked, and moving forward with what we have, and then bringing those ideas to the next round, or suggesting it from down there on the next round. The inherent thing for me is the rail seems like the logical. These are big boundary areas, and it does separate Linfield from Allied Arts in a fairly significant way, so that the rail is less of an impact for Allied Arts, more for Linfield, and El Camino is more Allied Arts and less for Linfield in those areas. So I'm viewing that, and I struggled with it, so I can completely understand what you're saying. I just had a couple questions about where we go forward, and it's ideas around, Bill, we have a 500-foot conflict of interest boundary, and these districts are relatively small. If there's projects within district, it could conflict out the actual representative of the district, right?
Potentially.
And that brings up the other side, which is how do we I think viewing it as we have 5 districts. Everybody needs to have somebody that lives in the community that they can access, right, and feel like they have that representative. But by the same token, are there examples of processes where you have council members that are representing committees where they may not be in their direct communities because you're trying to alleviate a conflict, but also you're trying to broaden the representation as much as possible? My concern is you're going to get very parochial early on at some point, and it could have some, negative effects relatively fast. I just don't know if there's practices for that or things that are done once you hit district up to try to encourage a mindset from there. The other point is, will there be a discussion because of the incumbency advantage in these smaller districts? Will there be discussions about term limits in these after this? And will there be an opportunity for the community to have that conversation?
I mean, the community can always have a conversation about term limits with or without a charter. I mean, it's not dependent on a charter.
Have you seen in any case where they have followed up something like districting with term limits or conversations like that? It's so much change, they maybe avoid it, but...
Shalice may have a better idea because they've worked with a lot of cities.
Yeah.
That's not a typical connection.
Okay.
In fact, there's fear on the other side that you don't have enough candidates running. So
Okay.
they're trying to get as many candidates available as possible.
Okay.
Running once you have districts,
That could be a
it
problem,
narrows
too.
the pool in
Understood.
some
Okay.
cases.
I looked into it once, and I think that possibly there was one in the history of Menlo Park, but generally no one's ever been elected more than 3 terms anyway.
There's exhaustion. Yeah. And then on major pieces of infrastructure within somebody's district that is basically citywide issues that have huge impacts, will there be conversations on how you alleviate that balance so that you aren't having ownership, right? District ownership on some of these issues, whereas somebody may say, well, that affects my neighborhood significantly, but it happens to be now in a different district, and the influence changes in terms of that. Those are the things that the soft shifts that I got lots of calls on that I didn't have any answers. And just be glad I'm not running again. So I should have answers. I don't know if anybody has any, but they've come up over and over again in the last week or two.
Well, to help add to the discussion, I suppose, is every agency in every city, the culture of the agency operates differently. So we always say that it's important from this point forward that the voters be aware that getting a candidate that can collaborate with the other council members is the most important thing. We have seen cases where you have a district that where that one council member is solely focused on his own district, and as a result alienates themselves from the others, and they end up getting dumped on. So you have all the strip bars, all the crap gets put in that district because they've alienated themselves from the rest of the council. So collaboration, now it's really the responsibility of the voters to pick someone who is going to be able to have a view of the entire city and work with the other council members in order to get anything done.
Thanks. Just want to bring those up.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Vice Mayor Okay, Councilmember Carlton. I thought I saw a light on first, but.
I just wanted to clarify that these populations are pure populations and not voters.
Total population, citizen, non-citizen, every human being.
Infant, old person?
Yes.
So just hypothetically, this would never happen in Menlo Park, I don't think, but hypothetically you could have an area where you have a whole bunch of engineers from overseas, for example, who can't vote, and a small number of voters who could take a whole district.
Yes.
And that's by state law.
It's based on the census, so it's the federal census, and this was the 2010, so I'm sure your city looks much different than it did in 2010. But that's federal law.
Okay. I don't want to have to repeat things because none of us want to stay here longer than we need to. So I agree with Councilmember Klein. And I don't mean that with disrespect because I understand what you're saying. But at this point, I think that the group has worked very hard and they've come up with something that's workable. And it's not going to be written in stone. So,
Vice Mayor Mueller?
Yeah, so in terms of the boundaries, as long as all of the other boundaries stayed locked and we weren't opening this up all over again for the advisory committee, I suspect this advisory committee would tell us if they considered what Peter thought and thought, no, not going to work. They'd tell us it's not going to work. So I'm not opposed to that, but I don't want to having them look at that, but I don't want to open the whole thing up for consideration all over again. If we're just talking about moving some boundaries between 3 and 4, because it's not just Peter who's asked about it, it's also the chamber who's asked about it. I'm fine with that. It seems like it's just it's like one line basically moving around there in the middle. But that being said, I respect greatly the work of the advisory committee. I know how hard they worked. I know how hard our staff has worked around this issue. And I also understand the considerations of my colleagues about how much that they'd like to get this wrapped up. So.
Okay. And I assume your opinion still stands in terms of, I know you mentioned that before I floated.
Yeah, and the other thing with that line right now, the Stanford project is empty. I mean, I think when we reevaluate this after we do the next census, that will be a great time to look at those lines. But I think right now I'm comfortable with what this group has done.
Okay. All right. So I think there's a pretty strong consensus around the 5-district map as is, 007A. So that's, as I mentioned at the start, I'm fine with that. I was just looking for suggesting an improvement. So I'm fine with staying with 5007A. And I want to make sure that there's consensus now to move on to the third topic, which is now sequencing. Okay. Any thoughts, comments?
I mean, I'll make a comment on that. I'm again going to thank the Advisory District Committee for doing all this work. And I appreciate what they have recommended and would just say that I would like to follow what your recommendation is. I know that this was sent to us unanimously, and I never attended any meetings either, I'll say that, but I've heard from people who did that the group was very thoughtful and very deliberate in their discussion and how they came up with this. And I think when you just gave your presentation now, that was very probably exemplary of how your meetings were. So I want to thank you very much.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I guess I'll simply add that, I would go with the recommendation of the commission. The thought behind it about also not having one side of the city go this once in 1 year and then the other side trying to kind of mix it up. I do think that makes sense, and so certainly I think their recommendation adheres to that. Vice Mayor Mueller?
I'm open to having a conversation about it because it was raised, but I don't want to waste time on it if there's not anyone else who wants to.
Yeah, I'm going to stand by with the recommendation as this is a lot of change. There's going to be, they're going to be taking, a couple of bites at this apple here. So it's coming. The representation will be coming and will be, cemented. So I'm comfortable that, getting there is going to be less than ideal, but I think it's as good as it can get given the recommendations. So I'm comfortable moving ahead.
Okay, so I think we have a consensus. I just want to looking back and forth, just making sure. So I think we've covered the main topics. Now I'd like to entertain a motion and the motion would basically accept the Advisory District Committee's recommendation on adopting a 5-district map. That map would be map 5-007A.
So moved.
And their recommendation on election sequencing.
I'll second that.
Okay. So.
Does yours work now, Kat?
Yeah, it does now.
Great.
The motion passes unanimously.
Any other comments? Any closing comments or
I
questions? Yes.
Have we done something for Nikki's husband? We want to close in memory of...
I think that's a good idea. But first, I just also, again, want to repeat our gratitude and thank yous to both the district and committee, as well as the staff and consultants involved in getting this done in a very short time, and certainly looking forward to, and so we've got 2 public hearings coming up, which I don't think there's going to be much, but at least, but I guess we'll be reviewing the actual ordinances, correct? All right. Okay. Okay, so I'd like to, at this point, adjourn the meeting in honor of Bob Anderson, who's Mickey Winkler's husband and former Mickey Winkler, our former mayor and council member, but her husband, Bob Anderson, who we've all met at different times. He was very active in the community and had a great sense of humor. So, and I didn't know that. Okay, maybe next week we'll do that. That would be appropriate. Okay. With that, all right. Thank you, everyone. Good evening, and we meet next Tuesday for a regular meeting, correct? At 6 p.m. So a slightly earlier starting point. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, Peter.